The lights on New Geneva Station flickered softly as the night shift began. Officer Jake Burton walked down the long corridor, his heavy boots making loud sounds on the metal floor. He had been working on this space station for only 3 weeks, and he already hated it. Jake came from Earth's old mining colonies where things were simple. People looked like him, talked like him, and followed the same rules he grew up with. But here on New Geneva Station, everything was different. Aliens walked around like they owned the place. People from all over human space lived and worked together. It made Jake angry. He stopped at the security desk and checked his watch. Almost midnight. The judicial complex should be empty by now. All the fancy judges and lawyers went home hours ago. At least that's what Jake thought. His radio crackled to life. "Burton, we got a report of someone moving around in the judicial building. Go check it out." "Copy that," Jake said. He grabbed his weapon and headed toward the judicial complex. The building was dark except for a few emergency lights. Jake's footsteps echoed in the empty hallway. As he turned the corner, he saw a man walking out of one of the offices. The man was tall and wore a nice suit. He carried a briefcase and looked tired. But what Jake noticed first was the color of his skin. "Hey you, stop right there," Jake shouted. The man turned around slowly. He was middle-aged with gray hair at his temples. His eyes were calm and intelligent. "Good evening, officer. Is there a problem?" Jake walked closer, his hand on his weapon. "What are you doing here? This building is supposed to be empty." "I was working late in my office," the man said quietly. "I'm Judge Marcus Williams. I handle the interspecies trade cases." Jake laughed, but it wasn't a nice laugh. "Judge? Right. And I'm the station commander. You got any ID, buddy?" Judge Williams reached slowly into his jacket pocket. Jake's hand moved to his gun. "Easy there, officer. I'm just getting my identification." The judge pulled out a small card and handed it to Jake. Jake looked at it for a few seconds, then threw it on the floor. "This is fake," Jake said. "You think you can just walk around here pretending to be somebody important? I know what you really are." "Officer Burton," Judge Williams said, reading Jake's name tag. "I assure you my credentials are real. If you would like to verify them, you can call Security Central." "Don't tell me what to do," Jake shouted. "Turn around and put your hands on the wall now." Judge Williams didn't move. "Officer, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. If you check with your supervisor, I said turn around." Jake grabbed the judge's arm and pushed him against the wall. Judge Williams didn't fight back, but Jake could see the surprise and pain in his eyes. From down the hall, footsteps approached. Ambassador Kethvar, a tall reptilian alien with green scales, walked toward them. He had been meeting with Judge Williams about an important trade agreement between humans and his people, the Saurians. "Judge Williams," the ambassador called out, "I forgot to give you the final documents for tomorrow's session." Jake looked confused. He still had the judge pressed against the wall. "Stay back, alien. This man is under arrest." Ambassador Kethvar's large yellow eyes widened. In his culture, judges were the most respected members of society. Seeing one treated this way was shocking. "Officer," the ambassador said carefully, "this man is Judge Marcus Williams. He is presiding over the most important trade negotiations in human history. What you are doing is—" "I don't care what you think," Jake yelled. "This guy is lying about who he is. Look at him. Does he look like a judge to you?" Judge Williams spoke quietly. "Officer Burton, please release me. You're making a serious mistake. The only mistake is people like you thinking you can pretend to be something you're not," Jake said. He pulled out his handcuffs. "You're coming with me." Ambassador Kethvar couldn't believe what he was seeing. He activated his communication device and started recording. In his long life, he had never seen such behavior from what was supposed to be an advanced species. Captain Lisa Rodriguez, the station's security chief, was reviewing reports in her office when her emergency alert started beeping. She looked at her screen and saw Ambassador Kethvar's transmission. "What in the world?" she whispered, then ran toward the judicial complex. Meanwhile, Jake had cuffed Judge Williams and was pushing him down the hallway. The judge walked with dignity, even though he was clearly in pain. His suit was torn, and there was a small cut on his cheek where Jake had pushed him against the wall. "You people think you run everything now," Jake said as they walked. "Well, not on my watch. I don't care what fake papers you carry around." Judge Williams said nothing. He had faced prejudice before in his life, but never from someone who was supposed to protect and serve. He thought about the important work he was doing, the trade agreements that could help both humans and aliens prosper together. Ambassador Kethavar followed them, still recording. He was sending everything back to his home world. The Saurian leadership would want to see how humans treated their own people. This could change everything. When they reached the security office, Jake pushed Judge Williams into a chair. "Sit there and don't move." Captain Rodriguez burst through the door just as Jake was about to start his paperwork. She looked at Judge Williams, then at Jake, then at the recording device in Ambassador Kethavar's hands. "Burton," she shouted. "What have you done?" "I caught this guy pretending to be a judge," Jake said proudly. "Had fake ID and everything." Captain Rodriguez walked over to Judge Williams and quickly removed his handcuffs. "Judge Williams, I am so sorry. Are you hurt? Do you need medical attention?" Jake's face went white. "Judge? But he can't be a judge. He's one of the most respected judges in human space," Captain Rodriguez said. "And you just assaulted him in front of an alien ambassador." Ambassador Kethavar stepped forward. "Captain Rodriguez, I have recorded everything. My government will want to know how humans handle such situations." Judge Williams stood up slowly, straightening his torn jacket. "Captain, I understand Officer Burton made an error in judgment. Perhaps we can resolve this quietly." "No, Judge," Captain Rodriguez said. "This cannot be resolved quietly. This incident will be reported through proper channels." Jake Burton stood in the corner, finally understanding what he had done. But instead of feeling sorry, he felt angry. Angry at the system that put people like Judge Williams in positions of power. Angry at aliens who thought they could judge human behavior. Angry at everyone except himself. Judge Williams picked up his briefcase and looked at Jake Burton one last time. "Officer, I hope someday you'll understand that justice isn't about the color of someone's skin. It's about doing what's right." As the judge walked out with Captain Rodriguez and Ambassador Kethavar, Jake Burton sat alone in the security office. He had no idea that his actions tonight would soon change the entire galaxy's view of humanity. The recording was already being transmitted across space to governments and news organizations on dozens of worlds. The incident was over, but the real story was just beginning. The emergency alert reached Admiral Helen Carter's ship at 3 a.m. station time. She was sleeping in her quarters when her communication officer woke her up with urgent news. "Admiral, we have a situation on New Geneva Station. A human officer assaulted Judge Marcus Williams in front of alien diplomats." Admiral Carter sat up quickly. She knew Judge Williams personally. He was one of the best legal minds in human space. "Get me a direct line to the station commander and prepare my shuttle. I'm going there immediately." Within 6 hours, Admiral Carter's ship docked at New Geneva Station. She brought with her a team of investigators and medical experts. Word of the incident was already spreading through the galaxy like wildfire. Dr. Sam Mitchell, the station's chief medical officer, was examining Judge Williams in the medical bay when Admiral Carter arrived. The judge sat on the examination table while Dr. Mitchell cleaned the cut on his face. "Judge Williams," Admiral Carter said as she entered. "I came as soon as I heard. How are you feeling?" Judge Williams looked tired, but calm. "I'm fine, Admiral. Dr. Mitchell is taking good care of me." Dr. Mitchell frowned as he looked at his medical scanner. "You have bruising on your arms and back, Judge. That officer used more force than necessary." Admiral Carter's jaw tightened. "I want every injury documented. This will be part of the official investigation." "Admiral," Judge Williams said quietly, "I need to get back to work. The Saurian trade negotiations are tomorrow. Ambassador Kethavar and I were supposed to finalize the agreements." "Judge, you should rest," Dr. Mitchell said. "You've been through a traumatic experience." "Doctor, with respect, I have a job to do. These trade agreements could bring peace and prosperity to both our species. I won't let one man's ignorance stop that." Admiral Carter watched Judge Williams with growing respect. Even after being assaulted and humiliated, he was thinking about his duty to humanity and their alien allies. In another part of the station, Captain Rodriguez was dealing with a very different problem. Jake Burton sat in the detention cell, still angry and unrepentant. "This is all wrong," Jake said when Captain Rodriguez came to see him. "I was doing my job. How was I supposed to know he was really a judge?" "You were supposed to check his identification properly," Captain Rodriguez said. "You were supposed to treat him with respect. You were supposed to follow proper procedures." "Those procedures don't work in the real world," Jake replied. "People lie. They pretend to be things they're not." Captain Rodriguez stared at him. "Jake, do you understand what you've done? This incident is being broadcast across the galaxy. Every alien government is watching to see how we handle this." Jake shrugged. "So what? Let them watch. Maybe they'll finally see that humans aren't as perfect as they pretend to be." Captain Rodriguez shook her head and walked away. She had never met someone so unwilling to admit their mistakes. Meanwhile, in the station's communication center, reporter Alex Stone was working frantically to get the full story. The incident had been picked up by news networks across human space and beyond. "This is Alex Stone reporting from New Geneva Station," he said into his camera. "Last night, a shocking incident occurred that has stunned the galactic community. A human police officer assaulted one of our own federal judges, apparently motivated by racial prejudice. The story was spreading faster than anyone could control. On Earth, government officials were calling emergency meetings. In alien capitals across the galaxy, leaders were questioning whether humans were really ready for full membership in the galactic community. Ambassador Kethvar was in his quarters, preparing a report for his homeworld. The Saurians valued justice, above all else. What he had witnessed went against everything they believed about proper civilization. His communication device chimed. It was Elder Torwin, the leader of the Saurian Council. "Ambassador Kethvar," the elder's voice was serious. "We have seen your recording of the incident. This is deeply troubling." "Yes, Elder, I have never seen such behavior from what we thought was an advanced species. What is your assessment of the situation?" Ambassador Kethvar paused. "The human officer showed clear prejudice and hatred, but the judge showed remarkable dignity and strength, and the other humans seemed genuinely shocked and ashamed." "Interesting. Continue to observe. We must decide whether to proceed with the trade agreements." Back in the medical bay, Judge Williams was finally cleared to leave. Admiral Carter walked with him toward his office. "Judge, I want you to know that Officer Burton will face the full consequences of his actions," she said. "Admiral, I appreciate that. But what concerns me more is what this incident says about us as a species. If we can't treat our own people with respect, how can we expect aliens to trust us?" They passed a large window that looked out into space. Dozens of alien ships could be seen in the distance, their crews probably discussing the incident. "Judge, do you think we can recover from this?" Admiral Carter asked. Judge Williams was quiet for a moment. "Admiral, I grew up poor in the slums of Detroit. I faced prejudice my entire life. But I also saw good people fighting against that prejudice. Humans have the capacity for both great evil and great good. What matters is which side we choose." In his office, Judge Williams found Ambassador Kethvar waiting for him. The alien diplomat stood when the judge entered. "Judge Williams, I wanted to personally apologize for what happened to you." "Ambassador, you have nothing to apologize for. In fact, I should thank you for recording the incident. The truth needs to be seen." "Judge, I must ask, do you still wish to proceed with the trade negotiations? My government is reconsidering our position." Judge Williams sat down at his desk and looked at the pile of documents they had been working on. These agreements would create jobs for millions of humans and aliens. They would establish peaceful trade routes and cultural exchanges. "Ambassador, what happened to me last night was wrong. But it doesn't represent all of humanity. If we cancel these negotiations because of one man's hatred, then we let that hatred win." Ambassador Kethvar's scales shifted color slightly. which in Saurian culture indicated surprise and respect. You would continue working after what you experienced? Ambassador, I became a judge to ensure that justice prevails over injustice. If I walk away now, I'm abandoning everything I believe in. The alien diplomat sat down across from the judge. For the first time since the incident, he felt hope. Maybe there was something special about humans after all. In the detention area, Dr. Mitchell was examining Jake Burton as part of the investigation. The doctor was looking for signs of mental illness or drug use that might explain his behavior. Officer Burton, have you ever had psychological counseling? Dr. Mitchell asked. I don't need counseling, Jake replied. I need people to stop pretending. The world is something it's not. What do you mean by that? I mean, people like that judge think they can just walk around like they belong in positions of power. It's not natural. Dr. Mitchell made notes on his tablet. He had seen prejudice before, but rarely this deep and irrational. As the day wore on, more ships arrived at New Geneva Station. Reporters, investigators, and diplomats from across the galaxy came to witness how humanity would handle this crisis. In the station's main conference room, Admiral Carter was briefing a group of senior officers about the investigation. Ladies and gentlemen, this incident has become a test of our character as a species. The entire galaxy is watching to see what we do next. One of the officers raised his hand. Admiral, what if we just transfer Burton to a remote posting and let this blow over? Admiral Carter's expression was stern. That is exactly what we will not do. We will investigate this fully, prosecute any crimes that were committed, and show the galaxy that humans believe in justice for all. Later that evening, Judge Williams and Ambassador Kethvar resumed their work on the trade agreements. They worked late into the night, just as they had before the incident. Judge, the ambassador said as they reviewed a complex section about shipping regulations. May I ask you a personal question? Of course. How do you continue to have faith in your species after what happened? Judge Williams put down his pen and looked at the alien diplomat. Ambassador, in my life, I have seen humans do terrible things. I have also seen them do wonderful things. The human who attacked me represents our worst impulses, but the humans who came to help me, who are investigating this honestly, who refuse to cover it up, they represent our best impulses. And which impulse is stronger? Judge Williams smiled slightly. That, Ambassador, is what we're about to find out. Outside the window, the stars shone brightly in the darkness of space, watching over a galaxy that was waiting to see what humanity would do next. 3 weeks after the incident, New Geneva Station had become the center of galactic attention. Ships from dozens of worlds surrounded the station. Every major news network in human space and beyond was covering what people called the trial of the century. The station's main courtroom had been expanded to accommodate visitors from across the galaxy. Humans sat next to aliens of all shapes and sizes. Some had scales, some had fur, some looked like walking trees. All of them had come to see how humans handled justice. Jake Burton sat at the defendant's table next to his lawyer, Paul Green. Green was a thin man with sharp eyes who specialized in difficult cases. He had taken Burton's case because he knew it would make him famous across the galaxy. At the prosecutor's table sat Maria Santos, one of humanity's best lawyers. She had volunteered to handle the case personally because she believed it was too important to trust to anyone else. But the most unusual observer was Elder Zix Thera, an ancient insectoid being who served as a judge for the Galactic Federation. Elder Zix Thera had lived for over 800 years and had seen justice systems from hundreds of worlds. She had come to Earth specifically to watch this trial. Judge Williams was not presiding over this case because he was the victim. Instead, an older human judge named Robert Collins was in charge. Judge Collins had worked with Williams for many years and respected him greatly. The court will come to order, Judge Collins announced. We are here to determine whether Officer Jake Burton committed assault and civil rights violations against Judge Marcus Williams. Maria Santos stood up for her opening statement. She was a small woman with dark hair, but her voice was strong and clear. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, citizens of the galaxy, we are here because a sworn officer of the law attacked an innocent man because of the color of his skin. This is not just about one incident. This is about who we are as human beings, she pointed to Jake Burton. The defendant didn't just make a mistake, he chose hatred over justice, he chose prejudice over truth. He chose violence over peace. Paul Green stood up for the defense. He was much taller than Santos and spoke with a smooth voice. Members of the jury, my client is not a monster. He is a product of a system that failed him. Officer Burton grew up in poverty on a mining colony where resources were scarce and tensions were high. He was never taught how to deal with the diverse society we live in today. Green gestured toward the alien observers in the courtroom. Look around you. Our world has changed faster than many humans can adapt. My client made errors, yes, but those errors came from fear and confusion, not evil. Over the next several days, witnesses testified about what they had seen. Ambassador Kethavar told the court about the dignity Judge Williams had shown, even while being assaulted. Captain Rodriguez explained how Burton had refused to admit his mistake even after learning the truth. Dr. Mitchell testified about the injuries he had documented. Judge Williams had bruises on his arms, back, and face. The force used was excessive for the situation. Several of Burton's fellow officers testified about his behavior in the weeks before the incident. They described how he had made racist comments and expressed anger about working alongside aliens and people of different backgrounds. But the most powerful moment came when Judge Williams took the stand. The entire courtroom fell silent as he walked to the witness chair. Even the alien observers seemed to lean forward to hear what he would say. Maria Santos began her questioning gently. Judge Williams, can you tell us about your background? Judge Williams looked out at the packed courtroom. I was born in Detroit in 2341. My father worked in a factory until it closed. My mother cleaned offices at night to support our family. What was your childhood like? We were poor. Very poor. I went to schools that barely had enough books. I wore clothes that other kids had thrown away. Some people told me I would never amount to anything because of where I came from and what I looked like. How did you become a judge? Judge Williams smiled slightly. I had teachers who believed in me. I had neighbors who helped me with my homework. I had coaches who taught me discipline, and I had a mother who worked 3 jobs to pay for my education. You faced discrimination as you advanced in your career? Yes, many times. People questioned whether I deserved my positions. They wondered if I was only promoted because of my race, not my abilities. But I never let that stop me from doing my job. Paul Green stood up for cross-examination. He knew he had to be careful. Judge Williams was respected throughout human space, and attacking him too harshly could backfire. Judge Williams, isn't it true that the legal system has given special advantages to people like you? What do you mean by people like me, counselor? Green realized his mistake immediately. I mean, people from disadvantaged backgrounds. The legal system gave me the same opportunities it gives everyone. The chance to prove myself through hard work and merit. But surely you understand that Officer Burton came from a difficult background too. Judge Williams looked directly at Jake Burton. Growing up poor doesn't make you hate people who look different from you. I grew up poor too. But I chose to fight for justice, not against it. Green tried a different approach. Judge Williams, what were you working on the night of the incident? I was finalizing documents for the Saurian trade negotiations. Can you tell us about those negotiations? Judge Williams paused. This was the moment he had been waiting for. Those negotiations are part of a larger project I've been working on for 3 years. It's called the Human Integration Protocol. A murmur went through the courtroom. Even Elder Zixthera's insect-like features showed surprise. What is the Human Integration Protocol? Maria Santos asked. It's a comprehensive legal framework that would grant humanity senior status in the Galactic Federation. It would give us leadership roles in interspecies conflicts and trade disputes. The courtroom erupted. This was the first time anyone had heard about such a project. Senior status in the Galactic Federation was something humans had dreamed about for decades. Order! Order! Judge Collins called out. Judge Williams continued. The protocol recognizes that humans have unique qualities that make us effective mediators. We understand conflict because we have experienced it. We understand injustice because we have fought against it. We understand forgiveness because we have learned to overcome our own mistakes. Elder Zixthara stood up, which was unusual for an observer. Your Honor, may I ask a question? Judge Collins looked surprised but nodded. The court recognizes Elder Zixthara. The ancient alien moved forward on her 6 legs. Her large compound eyes focused on Judge Williams. Judge Williams, how can you speak of human qualities for leadership when one of your own officers attacked you out of racial hatred? The entire courtroom held its breath. This was the question everyone wanted answered. Judge Williams stood up straighter. Elder Zixthara, that incident is exactly why humans should have leadership roles. Every species has individuals who give in to their worst impulses, but humans are the only species I know that consistently holds those individuals accountable. Explain. We are putting Officer Burton on trial in front of the entire galaxy. We are not hiding his crimes or making excuses for them. We are confronting our failures openly and honestly. That is what real leadership looks like. Elder Zixthara's head tilted in what her species considered a sign of deep thought. You believe that acknowledging weakness makes humans strong? I believe that the courage to face our flaws honestly is humanity's greatest strength. Perfect. Species don't exist, Elder, but species that can learn from their mistakes and grow from them. Those species can lead others toward a better future. Paul Green realized that his case was falling apart. In trying to defend Burton, he had inadvertently helped Judge Williams make the case for humanity's moral leadership. Jake Burton watched from his chair as Judge Williams spoke. For the first time since the incident, Burton began to understand what he had really done. He hadn't just attacked one man. He had attacked everything that made humanity special. As Judge Williams returned to his seat, the courtroom remained silent. Everyone present, human and alien alike, had witnessed something remarkable. They had seen a man who had been assaulted and humiliated rise above his personal pain to speak about humanity's potential for greatness. Elder Zixthara made notes on a strange device that glowed with different colors. She had come to observe human justice. Instead, she had discovered something far more important about what made humans unique in the galaxy. The trial was far from over, but everyone in the courtroom knew they had just witnessed a turning point. Not just in the case against Jake Burton, but in how the galaxy viewed humanity itself. Outside the courtroom, news reporters were broadcasting the day's events to billions of viewers across hundreds of worlds. The trial that had begun as a story about human prejudice was becoming something much larger. It was becoming a story about human potential. The jury deliberated for 2 full days. During that time, the galaxy waited. News ships from across human space and beyond remained docked at New Geneva Station. Diplomats held emergency meetings. Trade markets fluctuated as investors worried about humanity's future in the galactic community. Jake Burton sat in his cell, finally understanding the magnitude of what he had done. His lawyer, Paul Green, had told him to expect the worst. The evidence was overwhelming, and public opinion had turned completely against him. On the morning of the 3rd day, the jury announced they had reached a verdict. The courtroom filled again with the same diverse crowd of humans and aliens. Elder Zixthara took her place in the observer section, her ancient eyes watching everything with intense interest. Judge Collins called the court to order. Has the jury reached a verdict? The jury foreman, a middle-aged woman named Carol Wright, stood up. Yes, Your Honor, we have. On the charge of assault in the 1st degree, how do you find? Guilty, Your Honor. On the charge of civil rights violations? Guilty, Your Honor. On the charge of abuse of power under color of authority? Guilty, Your Honor. A murmur went through the courtroom. Jake Burton closed his eyes. Paul Green put his hand on his client's shoulder, but Burton pulled away. Judge Collins looked at Burton. The defendant will rise for sentencing. Jake Burton stood up slowly. He looked different than he had 3 weeks ago. The arrogance was gone. In its place was something that might have been the beginning of understanding. Officer Burton, Judge Collins said, you have been found guilty of serious crimes. These crimes were not committed in a moment of panic or self-defense. They were committed because of hatred and prejudice that you carried in your heart. Burton stared at the floor. However, Judge Collins continued, this court recognizes that humans have the capacity to change and grow. Therefore, instead of imprisonment, you are sentenced to 2 years of supervised rehabilitation, followed by 1 year of community service in alien outreach programs. The courtroom erupted in surprise. Many had expected Burton to be sent to prison for years. Elder Zixthera's compound eyes focused intently on the judge. Judge Collins raised his hand for silence. This sentence reflects humanity's belief that redemption is possible for those willing to do the hard work of confronting their own hatred. After the trial, Prime Minister Tony Walsh held a press conference from Earth. He was a tall man with gray hair who had led humanity's government for 6 years. Today's verdict sends a clear message, he said to the assembled reporters. Humanity does not tolerate hatred and prejudice. We will hold our own people accountable when they fail to live up to our values. A reporter raised her hand. Prime Minister, some alien governments are saying this sentence was too light. How do you respond? I would ask those governments to look at what we're actually doing. We're not hiding this incident. We're not making excuses. We're confronting it openly. And honestly, that takes more courage than simply locking someone away and forgetting about them. Meanwhile, Judge Williams was preparing for the most important presentation of his career. That evening, he would formally present the Human Integration Protocol to the full Galactic Federation Council. General Kate Sullivan, the military's representative to the Federation, met with Judge Williams before the presentation. Judge, are you sure this is the right time? She asked. After what happened with Burton, some species might not be ready to accept human leadership. Judge Williams adjusted his tie and looked out at the stars. General, there will never be a perfect time, but sometimes the worst moments reveal the most about who we really are. The Federation Council chamber was enormous. Representatives from 200 different worlds sat in a great circle. Some breathed oxygen like humans. Others required special atmosphere suits. A few existed as energy beings that communicated through light patterns. Judge Williams walked to the center of the chamber carrying a single tablet containing the Human Integration Protocol. The chamber fell silent. Honored representatives, he began. 3 weeks ago, one of my own people attacked me because of the color of my skin. Many of you have seen the recordings. Many of you have questioned whether humans deserve a place in this galactic community. He paused and looked around the chamber. I stand before you today not to make excuses for that attack, but to explain why it actually proves humanity's readiness for greater responsibility. A representative from the crystalline hegemony, a race of living crystal beings, spoke in a voice like wind chimes. Judge Williams, how can an act of hatred prove your species' worthiness? Because of what we did after the attack. We could have covered it up. We could have transferred the officer quietly. We could have blamed it on stress or mental illness. Instead, we put him on trial in front of the entire galaxy. A massive bear-like creature from the Ursine Confederacy stood up. Other species have justice systems too, human. What makes yours special? Judge Williams activated his tablet, and holographic displays appeared throughout the chamber showing the Human Integration Protocol. What makes our system special is not that we never make mistakes. What makes it special is that we learn from our mistakes and use them to become better. The protocol outlined a new approach to interspecies justice. Instead of the rigid, punishment-focused systems used by most galactic civilizations, it emphasized rehabilitation, understanding, and growth. This protocol recognizes that conflict is inevitable when different species interact, but it also recognizes that conflict can be a source of strength if handled properly. Elder Zixthera spoke from her section. Judge Williams, my species has observed justice systems for centuries. Most focus on maintaining order through fear. How is your approach different? Elder Zixthera, our approach focuses on maintaining order through understanding. When someone does wrong, we don't just punish them. We try to understand why they did wrong and help them change. A reptilian delegate from the Saurian Empire hissed softly before speaking. And if they refuse to change, then they face the consequences. But we give them the chance to grow first. That's what we're doing with Officer Burton. The presentation continued for 2 hours. Judge Williams explained how the protocol would handle trade disputes, territorial conflicts, and cultural misunderstandings. He showed how human mediators, drawing from their own experience with overcoming prejudice and hatred, could help other species do the same. When he finished, the chamber was quiet for a long time. Finally, the Federation's prime speaker, an ancient energy being called the Eternal Voice, addressed the assembly. This proposal is unusual. Most species seeking leadership positions emphasize their strengths and hide their weaknesses. Humans seem to be doing the opposite. That's exactly right, Judge Williams replied. We're not asking for leadership because we're perfect. We're asking for leadership because we know we're not perfect, and we've learned to deal with that fact. Back on New Geneva Station, young officer Danny Clark was watching the presentation on his tablet. Danny had worked with Jake Burton before the incident. He had seen the signs of Burton's prejudice, but had never spoken up about it. Now Danny felt guilty. Maybe if he had said something earlier, the whole incident could have been prevented. He decided to request a transfer to the Alien Outreach Division. He wanted to learn how to be better than Burton had been. In the rehabilitation center, Jake Burton was also watching the presentation. For the first time since his arrest, he felt something other than anger. He felt shame, not just for what he had done to Judge Williams, but for what he had almost cost humanity. A counselor named Dr. Emma Foster sat with him as they watched. Jake, how does it make you feel to see Judge Williams speaking to the Federation? Like I almost destroyed something important, Burton said quietly. Something bigger than just one person. That's the beginning of understanding, Dr. Foster said. The question now is what you're going to do with that understanding. The Federation Council did not vote immediately on the Human Integration Protocol. They announced that they would spend the next month studying the proposal and consulting with their home governments, but something had changed in how they looked at humanity. Elder Zixthera spoke to several other delegates after the presentation. I have observed many species over my long life, she said. Most try to hide their flaws. These humans put their flaws on display and explain how those flaws make them stronger. It is intriguing. Judge Williams returned to New Geneva Station exhausted but hopeful. Ambassador Kethvar met him at the docking bay. Judge, that was remarkable. I have never seen a presentation like that to the Federation Council. Thank you, Ambassador. Now we wait and see if the galaxy is ready for a different kind of leadership. As they walked through the station, they passed the security office where the whole incident had started 3 weeks earlier. Judge Williams paused and looked at the door. Judge? Ambassador Kethvar asked. I was just thinking, Ambassador. 3 weeks ago I was attacked in this hallway because of hatred and ignorance. Today that attack might have helped humanity take a major step forward in galactic leadership. How is that possible? Judge Williams smiled. Because sometimes, our worst moments force us to show our best qualities. Burton's attack revealed humanity's capacity for hatred, but our response revealed our capacity for justice, growth. 6 months had passed since the trial that shook the galaxy. Judge Marcus Williams stood on the observation deck of the FSS Unity, humanity's first mixed-species exploration vessel. Through the massive windows he could see Earth growing smaller. As the ship headed toward the outer rim of known space, the Unity was unlike any ship ever built. Its crew included humans, saurians, crystalline beings, and members of a dozen other species. They were embarking on a 5-year mission to explore uncharted territories and establish contact with new civilizations. What made this mission truly remarkable was that it was under human command. Admiral Roy Parker, a stocky man with kind eyes, approached Judge Williams on the observation deck. Judge, we'll be jumping to hyperspace in 10 minutes. Are you ready for this? Judge Williams smiled. Admiral, 6 months ago I was attacked by one of our own officers for the color of my skin. Today I'm serving as Chief Legal Officer on the galaxy's most important exploration mission. I'd say I'm more than ready. The path to this moment had been full of surprises. The Galactic Federation Council had voted on the Human Integration Protocol exactly 1 month after Judge Williams's presentation. The result had shocked everyone. The protocol wasn't just approved, it was adopted by unanimous vote and implemented immediately across all Federation worlds. But the real shock came with what happened next. Elder Zix Thera had requested a private meeting with Judge Williams after the vote. They met in a quiet conference room on the Federation's capital station. Judge Williams, the ancient insectoid, had said, "I must tell you something that will surprise you." "What's that, Elder?" The incident with Officer Burton was not an accident. It was a test. Judge Williams had stared at her in confusion. "A test? What do you mean?" Elder Zixthera's compound eyes had shifted in what her species considered embarrassment. "The Saurians approached us 6 months ago with concerns about humanity. They said humans were too violent and unpredictable for leadership roles. They asked us to devise a test. And you chose to have one of our officers attack me?" "No, Judge. We simply observed. We knew that in any large population, there would be individuals with prejudice and hatred. We waited to see how your species would handle such a situation when it inevitably occurred." Judge Williams had sat back in his chair, processing this information. "So Burton's attack was natural, but you were watching to see our response." "Exactly. And your response exceeded our wildest expectations." The truth was even more complex than Elder Zixithara had initially revealed. Ambassador Kethvar had been part of the test too. The Saurian trade negotiations were real, but they had been timed to coincide with the testing period. We needed to see how humans would handle crisis and opportunity at the same time. Ambassador Kethvar had explained. "Later, would you sacrifice justice for political advantage? Would you cover up problems to protect your image? The answers to those questions would determine humanity's future role in the galaxy." Now, 6 months later, humanity was leading the galaxy's first joint exploration mission. Judge Williams served as the mission's chief legal officer, responsible for establishing protocols for contact with new species. But perhaps the most shocking transformation was that of Jake Burton himself. Burton had completed his rehabilitation program and was now working for Dr. Emma Foster in the newly created Reconciliation Corps. This organization, inspired by humanity's approach to justice, helped species across the galaxy overcome their own prejudices and conflicts. Burton's first assignment had been to work with a group of young crystalline beings who had developed hostile attitudes toward organic life forms. Using his own experience with hatred and redemption, Burton had helped them understand how prejudice could destroy both the hated and the hater. "It's strange," Dr. Foster had told Judge Williams during a recent communication. "Burton has become one of our most effective counselors. His personal experience with hatred makes him uniquely qualified to help others overcome it." Judge Williams had watched Burton's transformation with amazement. The man who had attacked him out of racial hatred was now dedicating his life to fighting prejudice across the galaxy. As the Unity prepared for its hyperspace jump, Judge Williams made his way to the ship's conference room. The senior staff was gathering for their final briefing before departure. Admiral Parker sat at the head of the table. To his right was Commander Steve Harrison, a former military officer who now led the ship's diplomatic team. To his left was Dr. Linda Hayes, the ship's chief scientist and an expert in xenobiology. But what made this meeting special was the diversity of the attendees. Captain Zarthok, a Saurian military officer, served as the ship's tactical advisor. Dr. Whisperwind, a crystalline being, was responsible for communications with energy-based life forms. Engineer Gruffclaw, from the Ursine Confederacy, managed the ship's advanced propulsion systems. "Ladies, gentlemen, and respected beings," Admiral Parker began, "we are about to embark on the most ambitious exploration mission in galactic history. Our goal is not just to discover new worlds, but to establish peaceful contact with whatever civilizations we encounter." Dr. Hayes activated a holographic display showing their planned route. "We'll be exploring the Omega sector, which long-range sensors suggest contains at least a dozen potentially habitable worlds." Commander Harrison looked around the table. "Our approach will be based on the principles of the Human Integration Protocol. We won't impose our values on new species. Instead, we'll seek to understand their values and find common ground." Judge Williams stood up to address the group. As Chief Legal Officer, I want to remind everyone that we're not just representing our individual species on this mission. We're representing the possibility of true cooperation between different forms of life. Captain Zarthok's scales shifted to a respectful blue color. Judge Williams, may I ask you something? Of course, Captain. How do you feel about serving alongside species who initially questioned humanity's worthiness for this mission? Judge Williams looked around the table at the diverse group of beings. Captain, I feel honored. 6 months ago, we were a species, known primarily for our conflicts and contradictions. Today, we're trusted to lead the galaxy's most important mission. That transformation happened because we had the courage to face our worst qualities honestly. Dr. Whisperwind's crystalline form glowed with soft colors as she communicated. Judge Williams, do you believe the incident with Officer Burton was worth the pain it caused? It was a difficult question. Judge Williams thought about the attack, the humiliation, the physical and emotional pain. Then he thought about everything that had followed. Dr. Whisperwind, I wouldn't wish that experience on anyone. But if that incident was what it took to prove humanity's capacity for growth and justice, then yes, it was worth it. The Unity's engines hummed as the ship prepared for hyperspace. Admiral Parker looked at his diverse crew with pride. 6 months ago, humanity was a junior member of the Galactic Federation, struggling to prove ourselves worthy of respect. Today, we're leading the galaxy's greatest adventure. He paused and looked directly at Judge Williams. And it all started because one man had the courage to turn a moment of hatred into a lesson about redemption. As the ship jumped to hyperspace, Judge Williams thought about the strange journey that had brought him here. A racist attack in a space station corridor had somehow led to humanity's emergence as a galactic leader. But perhaps it wasn't so strange after all. Humans had always been a species that learned from their mistakes. The galaxy had simply needed to see that quality in action. In the Reconciliation Corps headquarters on New Geneva Station, Jake Burton was meeting with a group of young beings from various species who had been struggling with prejudice and hatred. As he looked at their faces, he saw reflections of his own past ignorance. I want to tell you about the worst thing I ever did, he said to the group, and how that worst thing became the beginning of the best thing I've ever done. As Burton began to tell his story, Ambassador Kethavar was in another part of the station, filing his final report on the Human Integration Project. The test has exceeded all expectations, he wrote. Humanity has demonstrated not just the capacity for leadership, but a unique approach to leadership based on humility, growth, and redemption. They do not lead because they are perfect. They lead because they understand that perfection is impossible, and that real strength comes from acknowledging weakness and working to overcome it. Meanwhile, Elder Zix Thara was addressing the Federation Council with the final results of the integration project. For 800 years I have observed civilizations rise and fall, she told the assembled delegates. I have seen species that claimed perfection crumble under the weight of their own arrogance. I have seen species that acknowledged their flaws grow, stronger with each challenge they faced. She paused and looked around the chamber. Humanity belongs to the second category. They are not the strongest species in the galaxy. They are not the smartest, they are not the most advanced, but they are the most willing to learn from their mistakes and grow from their failures. That makes them ideal leaders for a galaxy full of imperfect beings. Back on the Unity, Judge Williams stood once again on the observation deck, watching the stars streak past as the ship traveled through hyperspace. In a few hours, 3